Welcome to Have You Read It, the channel where we bring books to life, one summary at a time. Whether you're here for self-help, personal growth, or business inspiration, there's something for everyone. Today, we're diving into Michael Morris's Tribal: How the Cultural Instincts That Divide Us Can Help Bring Us Together. This book explores the fascinating world of cultural psychology and how our innate tribal instincts, though often blamed for division, can actually be powerful tools for connection and positive change. Morris uses the story of Guus Hiddink, a soccer coach who led underdog teams to unexpected victories in World Cups and Euro Cups, as a recurring example throughout the book. Hiddink's success stemmed from his unique ability to understand and manipulate cultural dynamics within his teams. He recognized that culture wasn't fixed, but rather malleable, and could be shaped by carefully managing the cues and signals surrounding his players. This cultural alchemy forms the basis of Morris's exploration of how we can harness tribal instincts for good. So, what exactly are these tribal instincts? Morris identifies three core instincts that have driven human behavior since the Stone Age: the peer instinct, the hero instinct, and the ancestor instinct. These aren't just instincts in the traditional sense, they're sophisticated cognitive and motivational systems. Let's start with the peer instinct. This is our innate drive to copy the learned responses of others, especially habits shared by our peers. Think back to the earliest humans. 1.5 million-year-old footprints discovered near Lake Turkana suggest a hunting party coordinating their movements to stalk antelope. Even earlier, evidence of complex foraging and the use of fire points to a level of teamwork far beyond other primates. This coordination, driven by the peer instinct, allowed early humans to thrive. The peer instinct is about more than just mimicking. It involves mind reading, learning from observation, and a motivation to conform, which are the building blocks of human culture. We internalize codes for each cultural community we're a part of. These codes are triggered by situational cues and guide us towards socially acceptable actions. Think about how you behave differently at a formal dinner compared to a casual hangout with friends. That's your peer instinct at work. But the peer instinct isn't always beneficial. It can lead to herd mentality and poor decisions, like following the latest investment craze without critical thought. However, when leveraged correctly, the peer instinct can be a force for positive change. Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's first prime minister, used this to his advantage. By changing the language and attire of port officials, he triggered memories of a less corrupt era and successfully curbed bribery, transforming Singapore into a global economic powerhouse. Moving on to the hero instinct, this is our drive to emulate those we admire and contribute to our community in ways that earn respect. Evidence of this emerges around 500,000 years ago with the appearance of Homo heidelbergensis. They developed sophisticated tools like stone-tipped spears, engaged in large game hunting, and built shelters. These activities often involved individual sacrifice for the benefit of the group, a hallmark of the hero instinct. The hero instinct relies on reputation. Humans are inherently moralistic and gossipy, constantly evaluating each other and rewarding or punishing based on reputation. This explains why even seemingly egalitarian societies have ways of rewarding high contributors. We're motivated not only by external rewards but also intrinsic ones, like pride and esteem. So, how do we know who to emulate? We look to our heroes, those with high status in our community. We're drawn to their stories and behaviors, even seemingly arbitrary quirks, hoping to glean the secrets to their success. This is why we're fascinated by celebrity gossip and leadership profiles. Leaders can tap into the hero instinct by using symbols that embody the group's ideals. Think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. It wasn't just a speech, it was a carefully crafted performance that evoked powerful national and religious symbols to inspire action. The final instinct is the ancestor instinct. This is our reverence for the past and our drive to maintain traditions. Evidence for this emerges with Homo sapiens in the late Stone Age. Cave art in Chauvet Cave shows that early humans not only created art, but returned generations later to continue it in the same style. This reverence for ancestral ways allowed for the accumulation of knowledge and cultural complexity, giving Homo sapiens a significant advantage over Neanderthals. The ancestor instinct involves more than just nostalgia. We learn traditions by rote and replicate them compulsively, even the parts that seem impractical. This rigid repetition is what gives rituals their meaning and power. We're motivated by a need for continuity, a connection to the past and the future. This is why traditions often revolve around the most important aspects of life, like birth, marriage, and death. Like the other instincts, the ancestor instinct can be exploited. Companies use carefully crafted origin stories to add a sense of heritage and legitimacy to their brands, even if those stories are more fiction than fact. Think of the Thanksgiving story we all learned in school, a heartwarming tale of pilgrims and Native Americans sharing a meal. The reality, as Morris points out, is much more complex. Thanksgiving as we know it was largely a creation of 19th century figures who invented a unifying national tradition. Having explored the three tribal instincts, Morris shifts his focus to what he calls tribal signals. These are informational cues that shape and reshape our cultural codes. He explains how different kinds of signals affect each of the three instincts. Prevalence signals, for instance, update our peer codes. These signals tell us what our group mates do, think, or say. The temperance movement skillfully used these signals to create the illusion of widespread support for prohibition. They held public pledge events, publicized inflated numbers of supporters, and flooded the media with anti-alcohol messages. However, the Literary Digest's polls later revealed a hidden majority opposed to prohibition, shifting public opinion and eventually leading to its repeal. This highlights the power of accurate prevalence information to correct misperceptions and drive social change. Prestige signals, on the other hand, shape our hero codes. These signals tell us who is respected in our community and what behaviors lead to status. Think of the influence of celebrities and influencers. They may not have any special expertise, but their fame itself confers prestige and shapes our aspirations. Leaders can use prestige signals by modeling desired behaviors, like Satya Nadella's listening tour at Microsoft, which helped shift the company culture. Finally, precedent signals shape our ancestor codes. These signals tell us about our group's history and traditions, influencing our sense of identity and obligation. Companies often use precedent signals by highlighting the long history of their brands, like Champagne's emphasis on its ancient roots. But precedent signals can be manipulated. The diamond engagement ring, a seemingly timeless tradition, was largely a creation of a 20th century marketing campaign. In the final section, Morris explores how these instincts and signals create ripple effects, driving cultural change in two main ways: grassroots movements and shock therapy. Grassroots movements are bottom-up changes that start with shifts in individual habits and gradually influence broader ideals and institutions. Think of the marriage equality movement. It started with individuals coming out, which sent prevalence signals that shifted public opinion, eventually leading to changes in laws and policies. Shock therapy, on the other hand, is a top-down approach where institutional changes disrupt existing patterns and create space for new ideals and habits. Think of Sweden's switch from left-hand to right-hand driving. An unpopular but necessary institutional change led to rapid shifts in behavior and attitudes. Both strategies have their limitations. Grassroots movements can fizzle out if they fail to gain widespread support or translate into institutional change, as seen with the Occupy movement. Shock therapy can backfire if the changes aren't perceived as legitimate or if people lack the know-how to adapt, as seen with the failure of some shock therapy economic reforms in post-Soviet Russia. In the final chapter, Morris tackles the topic of toxic tribalism. He argues against the notion that tribalism is inherently toxic. He proposes that the negative effects often attributed to tribalism are actually distortions of our natural tribal instincts, driven by specific triggers and signals. For instance, political polarization in the US isn't simply about hating the other side. It's largely driven by pure instinct conformity, amplified by echo chambers, and the sorting of people into like-minded communities. This epistemic tribalism leads to divergent worldviews and makes it difficult to understand or cooperate with those who hold different beliefs. Similarly, racial inequity isn't always about overt hostility. It can stem from in-group favoritism, an unconscious bias to help those who are like us. This ethical tribalism can lead to discrimination in hiring and other areas, even without any malicious intent. Finally, sectarian extremism isn't just about primal rage. It's often driven by perceived threats to tradition and amplified by ceremonial gatherings that reinforce absolutist views. This existential tribalism can lead to violence and conflict, even within seemingly peaceful societies. So, what are the antidotes to these toxic forms of tribalism? Morris suggests a multi-pronged approach. For political polarization, we need to break out of our echo chambers and engage with diverse perspectives. For racial inequity, we need to be aware of in-group favoritism and create systems that promote inclusion. For sectarian extremism, we need to challenge absolutist views and promote intercultural dialogue. The main takeaway from Tribal is that our tribal instincts are not flaws, but features. They are the very things that make us human and have enabled our species to thrive. The challenge lies in understanding how these instincts operate, how they can be distorted, and how they can be harnessed for good. Here are some easy-to-remember heuristics. Triggers, signs, trigger peer codes. Symbols trigger hero codes, and ceremonies trigger ancestor codes. Signals, prevalence signals shape peer codes, prestige signals shape hero codes, and precedent signals shape ancestor codes. Change, transforming a culture requires unfreezing the old and cultivating the new. This often involves a combination of top-down and bottom-up approaches. Thanks for watching. Have you read it? Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next book dive.